Okay, so I'm going to start out with my React template. And the only reason really, well, just really because it's probably would take about 20 minutes to get this set up. But again, hopefully you're somewhat comfortable getting to this stage, I hope. At least to do it a few times to realize that there's not a lot of magic that's going on. You can sort of see what the moving parts are. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to, and at that point, by the way, if you want to start out with this template, then feel free to do it.
What's great about it, I set up my own template.
Or
a little bit different way, but be that as it may, I use it as a sort of a guide, and then I try to do it and I refer to it, so it still becomes this exercise in doing it. It's still having a reference point so that you're not...
Yeah, sure. And it's helpful. And it's kind of minimal, which is good too. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to call this React Form Demo. And I'll go in here to React Form Demo. And since I cloned this and I want this to be another repo on its own, I'm going to remove the Git repo. I'm going to do git init so that I've got a Git repo again. And I'll do npm install. It is very basic, bare bones, React, Webpack setup. Maybe slightly more than bare bones. There's a SQLized setup that's there. I already have the database on here, so I don't have to create it, but this basically has one route with products, and there's 3 products there.
Obviously, we've seen a lot of workshops where they create the database automatically as a result of starting it. And why do you not?
I don't know. I just don't know how to do. I don't know how to do it. So I'm not sure exactly what you have to do. I think there's a little bit of work there to go and create the database dynamically. I think more than likely, you could have that, and that makes things easier for someone when they're going to grab a repo. But real-world application, you're probably going to go and create the database. It makes it convenient for downloading an existing repo. And it happens to be the one thing on those repos that if something fails, like that's usually the thing that ends up failing. And if it does, just go and create the database on your own. It's not that tricky to do. So if we go over here and I say npm run start dev, I've got an app that inserts 3 users. And if I go over here and I say localhost 3000, I'm going to see the number 42. And again, just a quick review of what we've got here. We've got our, I like to sort of break it down into 3 parts. The database side of it, the express and route side of it, and then the client side of it. And starting from there, we've got our DB. Again, all this stuff is in one file. Nothing that crazy that's going on here. We've got our sync, we've got our seed. We've got a nice clean data structure here. Again, this would be set up in 3 files if we had a more complex application. We've got a routes file that just ends up getting the products. We've got our server file that sets up a couple of static routes, mounts our router for our routes here. Again, more complex app. This would be a folder with separate routers, so you could separate things out. Here, we really only have 2 routes for our application. We look at the source file. Not all that much that's going on here. We're pulling in React. We're pulling in component. We're pulling in render from React DOM. We've got our render. We've got our app here, which has a prop called special number, which we end up catching here from the props, and we use it here. Not a big deal one way or the other. Okay, let's pretty much destroy this, and let's actually set up a route. So what I want to end up creating is a home page, a products page, and then a page where I can insert products so we can demo how forms work. We've seen some of this already, but let's actually take a quick look at it again. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say npm install, and this is going to be React Router. Again, it's important to get the 3.0 version. I'm going to save this. Once I have this, I'm going to go back here. And there's a number of things that I'm going to pull in from React Router. I'm going to pull in route. I'm going to put in, router, route. I'm going to pull in link. I'm going to pull in index, route. I'm going to pull in hash history from React Router. And I'm going to create my routes, right? What happens is that when you render your routes, what's happening is React Router is basically taking over your application. Based on what your URL is, the appropriate component will end up loading. All applications that are single-page application frameworks have some idea of how a client-side router is going to work. Because again, as you're navigating through the application, you're not reloading your page, you're only reloading parts of your page. So what I want to do here is set up my routes. And what this is going to be a router. We've got to put a history in here, and we're going to use the hash history. And this is going to be my router. And just to be at the exact same spot that I am right now, I'm going to specify that I have a route, and the path is going to be /, and my component is going to be app. Thank you. And let me actually do a closing tag here too, because I know I'm going to end up nesting some stuff in here. And sometimes what I would end up doing in this case is actually naming this something more like layout, because all the different parts of my application are going to be within this, this particular route. So if I end up doing that, and now if I go here and I say when you render, go ahead and render these routes. Okay? It's really rendering the router. And when I do that, assuming that this works out okay, and I go back here, I'm close to being in the same spot. The only difference here is that I'm not passing any special number here. I don't really need that anyway. I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to start setting this up. So what I want to have happen here is I want this, I'm going to put a nav bar here. I could always pull the nav bar out, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say class name equals nav tabs. And this is going to be a list item. I'm going to have another list item. And this is going to go to home. So this is going to be a link to /. I'm going to have 3 links here. I'm going to have a link to products. Doesn't exist yet. And I'm also going to have a link to a route that I'm going to call products add. And this is going to be add a product. I'm going to do a separate lecture at some point to go a little bit more into nested routes. This looks like a nested route. It looks like add is underneath products, but it really isn't. It's basically a sibling route, which we'll end up doing in a second. So what I'm going to have down here is a couple of different things. First of all, I'm going to have an index route that basically says, hey, look, if you end up going in here and you haven't specified anything underneath this route, let's use the home component. I haven't created it yet. We'll do it in a second. And let's do another route. And the path here is going to be products. And we'll use a component that we're going to call products. And we'll go over here and we'll have another path for products, add, and I'm going to call this product form. None of these things exist. Right? If I ended up going back over here, I would see that this would end up blowing up if I went to reload it, because it's not going to know what these things are. And you know, these messages will tell you, hey, look, you told me that you have a component called home, but I don't know what the heck it is. So Let's go back here. We'll start out with 3 dumb components, but we'll have to make one of these smart. So this is going to be const home. This will be really simple. Div class name equals home. And we'll also have products. And we'll also have product form. And let's name these accordingly. Products, product form. Right? So if we end up going back here and we reload this, we should see that we have our home, we have our products, we have added products. Notice nothing is showing up here. And the reason why nothing is showing up here is that when the router ends up rendering the different components, if you have nested components, you have to specify where you want things to wind up. Where does it put the child components? And more than anything else, I think this throws people a little bit. So one thing that I'm going to do, just as a quick aside, is to go to JSBin. And I'm going to bring in, this is something you could always do. If you have a question about React, you don't have to go and set up a brand new application. In fact, if you don't understand the way something ends up working, instead of sending someone a big chunk of code that you wrote, try to simplify it out. And you might solve it on your own, but it'll be easier when you say, hey, look, I don't know, I can't get this to work in a very simple example, then someone might be able to point something out to you. So if I go over here and I specify div ID equals root, and let's go over here and we're going to use our ES6 and our Babel, and I'm going to say, just as a starting point, const root document get element by ID root, and this is the UMD version of the React DOM. So you have React DOM render, and what do I want to render? I'll start out with a HR to the root. Let's just see if I'm getting a message here. React DOM, because it's React DOM with a capital DOM. And you can see my HR tag. Let me do a console.clear to get these messages not to show up. Okay, so once I end up doing that, I just want to do a real simple example. Let's say we were to go over here. I think this helps sort of tell you what's happening with the children. If I go over here and I say foo, and I go over here and I say foo is simply going to be a div, and it's going to have the string foo in it. Okay? Now I have a valid component that I could create, and I could go over here and put in foo. And you see the word foo show up over there on the right. Right? Everyone see that? Okay? Now, what if I did this? All right, still going to be foo. And I go over here and I put in hello. All right? Just think about it for a second. A lot of times people say, I'll say, well, where do you expect the hello to show up? And they'll say, oh, well, shows up after the div, shows up before the div, shows up in the div. Yeah, there's no clue where to put it. What does that feel like, by the way? Does that feel similar to something that we sort of looked at way back? I actually just thought about this. Does that feel sort of familiar when I say it doesn't really know where to put this? Remember when we were doing templating and we did a layout page, right? And you extended the layout page? If you had a page that extended the layout page and you put something in it, right? Unless you put it in a block, and the layout page had that block, how would the layout page know where to put it? It wouldn't know, right? So when we put in these, it's not going to take a guess where to put this thing. So what we end up doing here is to go inside here, and we want to get the children. Now, what ends up happening here is that with this simple component, props will get passed, and we could say props.children. Now we have foo and hello. Okay? We could also, if we wanted to, These are nice ES6. The more you use it, the more it makes sense. This time, we could just end up doing that. We're in the same spot. Just as a quick aside, what would prevent you from, I always like this example too, from doing this? It's the same exact way, right? So again, that's kind of what's happening with children. Again, with React Router, this is something that eventually will become a little bit easier. But I know that part of actually passing the properties down gets to be a little bit confusing. Let's see it one or two more times. So let's just go back to this app for a sec. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to specify this is going to be my this, right? Because I'm in a smart component, this dot props dot children. And once I do that, I should see products, add a product, product form, and home. Okay? I'm not going to worry about making those active. That's something you could do on your own. Remember, you always have the option of, console.log, this.router. What is it? This props.router. And you could look at the location and the path name, right? To determine which one of those tabs you want to be active. So we could see products add and products. So now let's actually go here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this a little bit more stateful just to show our products. And what we're going to do is I actually have Axios in here. I should have probably taken it out, but I have it in my package JSON from Axios. And we're going to go over here and we're going to say this dot state equals products with an empty array. And what we'll do here is we'll say component did mount, and we'll specify that we want Axios to get. We've got that route with API products. This gives us a response. We're only interested in the data. That data is our products. And we could say this set state, and we'll go over here, and we're going to set the state to products. And just if we want to see that here, we go into render, we could say console.log this.state. So now when we do that, we'll see that we have our products array and we've got our 3 products. Now once we end up getting that, just to make things a little bit simpler here, one thing we could always do is pull out products equals this.state. All right. So again, we're just using ES6 destructuring to do that, save a little bit of typing, right? Instead of saying this.state products equals this.state products, we just pull out products, and now we can use this variable here. Now, what I want to do here is I want to go over and I want to get my products in here. It's really what I want. And I'm going to go over here and just do this on multiple lines. Again, this is a pretty dumb component. And I'll go over here, and just for the sake of argument, I'll go over here. And if we wanted to do this multiple lines just so you could see it, you could do that, in which case I'm going to be forced to do a return here. But this is all very legitimate still. And I can run this, not doing anything with products. Let's see, I have a little syntax error here. And here, when you end up doing the return, you can't put the semicolon there. That always trips me up. Let's go here, rerun this. So we've got products, add a product. Let's go back here. And if I go over here and I say console.log products, it's going to tell me that this is undefined. Okay? The reason why it's undefined is that even though it's up here, I need to push it down here. And this is where we could say, hey, look, I want to basically clone you. React, clone element, this.props.children, and we're going to end up cloning them, and what we want to pass to them, and I'm going to be very explicit here. I'm going to say products is equal to, actually I could just do this, right? So all that's going to do is basically pass what was on the state down, right, to the children. Granted, I don't need it on home. If I wanted to, I guess I could do something with it if I wanted, right? Nothing would prevent me from going here and grabbing products from home and going over here and on home saying, you know, we have products.length. Products. Nothing would prevent me from doing that. And if I did that and I went back to home and reload this, it'll tell me that I have 3 products. On the same token, if I end up going down here to my products page, I'm going to basically just go and do a quick loop. So here's my UL. I'm not even going to style it. And I'll go over here and I'm going to specify products.map. Gives me a product list item. I know I'm going to need a key or else React is going to bark at me. Product.id. And this is going to be product.name. And this is going to be closing li map and this. And if I end up doing that, let's get rid of this console.log. And I rerun it and I go to products, I'll see that I have my 3 products. Now what I want to do on this page, I want to put a form. And so this is actually going to be, on the form, what I really need to do, and this is, forms are one of those things that are a little bit of a pain to use in React. And there's probably some other libraries eventually that you could pull in to make your life a little bit easier so you don't have to do this all the time. But again, React is pretty bare-boned. React is good at rendering a DOM, but if you want to do things with the state, and since a form is changing its value, it really has to have its own state to some degree. So what I'm going to do here is go in and make this a smart component class product form extends component. Again, ideally, this should be in separate files. We could move that in when I push it up. Maybe I'll move it into separate files. I'm going to put a constructor here because I know I'm going to need it at some point. I'm going to put a render here. And what I'm going to end up doing for this constructor, let's actually just put our form in. So here, I'm going to have a return. I'm going to have a simple form with a label and a button. So I'll go over here and I'll specify that I have a form. I'm going to put a div with a class name of form group. So it'll group these things together. I'm going to give a label and put a name. And I'm going to put an input with a class name of form control. And I'll also put a button, class name, btn, btn primary, create. Right, so once I do that, assuming that I don't have a mistake here, which I do, so my constructors I've got to call super, so let's do that. So once we end up doing that, we should see our products form. Now what's going to happen here, if I end up doing create, the default behavior of a form is to make a GET request with your form data. It's kind of an interesting thing. If you look at the URL, you'll see that, and the reason why you don't see much over here, let me actually just change this. I'm going to give my form name equals name, right? So when it ends up going to the server, so now I'm going to reload this, and now if I do this, totally lying. Let's just take a look at our network tab. Yeah, so it's doing, now you can see it actually. It's doing a full form submission with the name value. That's obviously not what I want to have happen. So let's actually do a couple of things here. One of the things that we want to do is that we want to keep track of what's in that text field, okay? And in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and I'll put in this dot state equals, and I'll put in name is an empty string. These are going to be the properties of the product that I'm going to end up inserting. And if I want to do that, and the state is basically, this thing is going to change and I want to keep track of it, what I'm going to end up doing here is to say onChange equals, and I'll put in, again, this is a smart component, and I'll say this handle name change. Okay? So now if I go over here and I say handle name change, what ends up getting passed to this, and this is happening, the React is wiring up the DOM for this, an onChange event, that's a standard DOM event. I could go in here and I could get this event, and if I go over here and I say console.log e.target.value, I could go over here, and every time I type this, I'll see this changing. Okay? Now, what I really want to do here is I want to basically say, hey, look, this dot set state name equals e dot target dot value, right? Now, you've seen this before. The error that I'm going to run into is that it doesn't know what set state is, and the reason why that happens is because I just need to do this standard thing to basically say this handle name change equals this handle name change dot bind to this. And if I just do a console.log of this dot state, and I go back over here, I can see the state is changing as I type in there. Now, what I want to actually have happen here is that I want to put somewhere up here on my top component some way that the user can actually go and create a new product. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in here, and this is what the code is going to eventually look like. I'm going to have to put a server-side route on this. I'm going to put in create product. This is going to get passed in a product. And I'm going to be a little bit, well, actually, don't necessarily have to be all that optimistic about this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Axios, what I want you to do is I want you to post. Where do I want you to post to? As yet to be created API products, post, I want to post the product. And I'm going to, again, get back a response. I'm only interested in the data, in which case I have my product, and what I'm going to do is say this set state. What am I going to set the state to? Well, I could do this in two steps, but this is going to be products, and what this is going to do is going to be this state products, and I'm going to concat to it. When you do concatenation, you basically concatenate two arrays, and I'm going to concat a single product. What I'm doing is creating a new array of products, and I'm setting it to the state. Okay? Now, granted, if I was getting my products in some alpha order, or there was some other logic that was going on the server, then I might have to make a call and get all my products. But I'm assuming that the order is not that critical at this point, and I'm basically just adding this to the products. Let's make sure I don't have any sort of typo here. And yeah, I sort of do this all the time. Products, this dot set state. I'm missing a couple of things here. Yeah, the braces, right? Set state. That's what I'm concatenating to. And that looks a little better. And one thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go over here. And again, if we want to have the state inside here, this dot create product equals this dot create product dot bind to this. Now, again, I want to move this. What I really want to do is I want to move this down the chain. And again, if I want to move this down the chain, the same way that I'm passing products down here, I want to pass create product, this create product. Once I do that, this is going to get passed to my product form. And what I could do is when I end up handling this change, what I could do is I could say this dot props, what do I call it? Create product? This dot props, create product, and I'm basically just going to say, hey, look, here's my state that has the product name. Okay? Let's just see what happens at this point. Okay? So basically, I'm passing this down. I've got a...
Don't you have to put it in the constructor?
No, because the props are the props. The props end up getting passed. Yeah.
Oh, so I don't have to put it.
You don't have to.
Oh, okay.
So now if I do this, and I go back to this page, the error that I'm hoping to get, let's see, I'm getting a different error here. Oh, frankly, I have this in the wrong spot. I don't want to save this here on the handle name change. That would be silly. That would be saving the product every time I typed in a character. What I really want to do is that I want to put on my form a couple of different ways to do this. You could do on submit equals, and I'm going to go over here. So on submit handle name change, we'll say on save product. Okay. So now if we go over here and we say on save product, the first thing I'm going to do is I don't want my form to end up going back to the server. So on save product is also going to be passed an event. And I'm going to specify that I want to prevent the default behavior. All that I am testing out now is I should no longer see this error. On save product is not defined true. It's not on save product. It is what? This on save product. So now if I do that, and I go over here and I do that, I should see that nothing should end up happening. Notice my URL got a little screwy here. Just keeping this stuff on here, which I don't want. So if I go back here, home, products, add a product, and do that, nothing should happen. What I really want to have happen here is that I want to basically take from this dot props, create product, and I'm going to use this dot state. And now at this point, I expect that if I go over here and I do this and I hit create, that if I look at my console, and I could just be a little bit delayed here, let me reload. If I do this, sometimes it takes a while for the bundle to build. I'm going to get an error message here. Cannot read props of null. Let's make sure I'm doing this correctly. Again, this is the same issue that I have all over the place. Can't read props. Reason why you can't read props is, again, this dot save on save product equals this on save product dot bind this, in which case I should get a different error. So if I do this and go and create, I'll find out that this post doesn't exist. So let's go and actually fix that. This is a real quick one here. And it's going to be as simple as making this a post, same URL. Instead of models, product, find all, we're going to create. This is going to be with the request.body. And this is going to give me a product, and I'm going to send that product back. Now let's just take a quick look, because what I'm guessing is that I don't have, because this is pretty minimal, I don't have my body parser set up here. So if I say app.use require body parser, and this is going to be the JSON body parser, so if something comes across the wire in JSON format, it'll end up turning it into an object, which I want it to do. This is probably going to break here because I don't have body parser installed, in which case npm install body parser save. Let me run this again. npm run start dev. Go back over here. Run this. Do create. Okay. Now, I'm not going to see any change here, but if I go back to products, I'll end up seeing that product. Now, a couple things you might notice here. One of them being that if I was going to stay on this page and I was going to allow the user to put in multiple products, I might want to have that go away. It's a very simple fix. I could go get that to go away by going back here, and if I go back and look at my product form, I could specify that when I end up creating this product, what I could end up doing is specifying this set state name is empty. And the other thing that I'm going to have to do in order to, if I did that, nothing's going to break, but nothing's going to change. And the reason why it's not changing is that I'm getting the state from this input, but I'm not using the state for this input. So what I need to do here is to specify that my value is equal to this dot state dot name. In which case, when I do this, again, let me just make sure this all went in, and I do create, that empties out. Now, the last thing that I want to do is, it would be a little bit nicer if, in fact, you went back and you saw that your product got added. So one of the things that I can do with my router is that I'm going to keep this here just so you could see it. It's not really going to end up doing anything, because immediately after this, I'm going to say, hey, look, this dot props dot router, okay? And what you could do is you could end up pushing to the router. What that basically says, if you think about navigating through the different pages of your app and going back and forth as a stack, what you're doing is you're basically putting something on the stack. That's allowing you to go to a different page, and I could push and say, do me a favor, go to products. What that'll end up doing is now if I end up doing that, it'll take me back here. So that's a way that you can use your router to navigate. I don't know if it comes up in the workshop, but it's something to be aware of. And that's a very, very simplistic example with forms. You could look at the documentation to see how checkboxes and selects end up getting handled. Let me stop this recording.